The first time the aliens saw Earth's ancient tanks roll onto the battlefield, they laughed. Not the nervous kind of laugh that hides fear, but a full, mocking roar that echoed across the command decks of their shining warships. To them, it was absurd. Metal beasts with tracks instead of gravity drives, barrels instead of plasma arrays, armor forged from steel instead of phase composites. Primitive, outdated, hopeless. The invaders called it the Museum War. But they didn't know what humanity had been forced to learn over centuries of struggle. That survival isn't about technology. It's about will. When the first alien transmission reached the United Nations Defense Network, it wasn't a declaration of war. It was a statement of pity. The alien voice, calm and almost sympathetic, said humanity would be peacefully assimilated into the galactic dominion. They promised prosperity, medicine, energy, 1,000 years of advancement overnight. All humanity had to do was kneel. The message was broadcast on every frequency, every screen, every city square. But humanity had heard such promises before, from empires, tyrants, conquerors. And Earth remembered what it meant to fight for freedom. So the response was simple. No. In orbit above the blue planet, the alien fleet shimmered like a silver storm. Thousands of vessels hung against the void, each carrying weapons that could vaporize a city. Below, on the plains of old Europe, rusting machines began to wake. Ancient tanks, relics of wars long past, were dragged out of museums, repaired by trembling hands and painted with fresh flags. They weren't meant to stand against plasma fire. They weren't meant to win, but they became symbols, reminders that even when outmatched, humans never surrendered quietly. The aliens laughed harder when they saw them. One of their captains, standing before a holographic display of Earth's defenses, couldn't even speak for several seconds through his amusement. "They send relics against us?" he mocked. "Is this a ritual? Do they worship their dead weapons?" The laughter spread across the fleet. To them, this wasn't war. It was extermination disguised as sport. But what they didn't understand was that Earth was never just about its machines. It was about the people behind them. Farmers who learned to weld armor plates, mechanics who rewired engines by hand, soldiers who refused to die quietly. From the deserts of Africa to the forests of Eastern Europe, humanity turned every scrap of metal, every ounce of fuel into a weapon. And when the tanks rolled out, their engines thundered like heartbeats across the land. On the alien flagship, the laughter stopped the moment their scanners detected movement underground. At first, it looked like chaos. Scattered signals, erratic energy bursts, interference. Then came the silence before the storm. The first strike didn't come from space or from a hidden orbital cannon. It came from Earth's crust itself. Nuclear silos buried deep beneath the planet released their fury, not into the alien fleet, but into the atmosphere. Massive electromagnetic pulses rippled outward, blinding alien sensors and scrambling their navigation systems. The sky turned into static. In the confusion, those old tanks began their march, not to fight the invaders directly, but to draw them in. The aliens, blinded and overconfident, descended to the surface to observe the final resistance. That was their mistake. Humanity had prepared the ground for them. Every city, every valley, every street wired with traps, hidden mines, and railguns disguised as civilian towers. What the aliens called primitives were in fact bait in a larger plan. Among the chaos, a young commander stood in a reinforced command post near the ruins of Berlin. He wasn't a general by rank. There were no ranks left, only survivors. His uniform was torn, his face marked with dust and oil. Around him, screens flickered with distorted images of the alien landing zones. "They think they're fighting machines," he said quietly to his team. "They're fighting us." Outside, thunder rolled not from storms but from artillery fire. The old tanks moved through burning fields, their armor glowing from near misses. Drones followed overhead, feeding live data back to the commanders. It was a patchwork army, part machine, part desperation, but it worked. The tanks didn't need to destroy alien walkers. They only needed to keep them distracted long enough for humanity's real weapon to come online. Far below the surface, in secret tunnels built decades before, something ancient and forbidden stirred. The Helios Network. It was humanity's last gamble, a project abandoned after global treaties banned its development. Designed to manipulate gravity fields and channel solar energy directly through the atmosphere, it was meant to power entire continents. But now, it would be turned into something else. Something that could make the aliens regret ever stepping foot near Earth. As the aliens advanced, still half amused and half irritated, their sensors began detecting strange fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field. One by one, their ships reported malfunctions. Weapons wouldn't fire. Engines sputtered. Shields flickered like dying lights. On the surface, alien troops found themselves trapped, their gravity units pulling them into the ground instead of lifting them. It was as if the planet itself had turned against them. In orbit, their admirals demanded explanations. "It's impossible," one of them hissed. No species this young could manipulate stellar energy. But the truth was, humanity hadn't mastered it. They'd simply pushed every limit, risked every life, and unleashed a power they barely understood. The commander in the Berlin post watched the sky ignite. Beams of light, brighter than dawn, erupted through the clouds. Alien ships, once proud and invincible, began to fall like dying stars. The ground shook with every impact. The tanks below kept firing, not because they expected to win, but because they refused to stop. The soldiers inside them smiled grimly as their shells hit targets far beyond what their guns were ever designed for. Yet victory was far from certain. For every alien ship that fell, more appeared beyond the moon. Their reinforcements stretched across systems. Earth's skies burned, cities crumbled, and still humanity fought on. The commander looked at the holographic map, red markers everywhere, losses on every front. But his eyes fixed on one signal deep beneath the Pacific. The Helios core was awakening faster than expected. Too fast. A voice came through the comms, an engineer screaming over static. "We can't control it! The energy surges—" The transmission cut out. The lights in the command post flickered, and for a moment the entire horizon glowed white. The aliens stopped laughing then. Every sensor in their fleet went dark. For a single heartbeat, even the stars seemed to vanish. And in that silence, something ancient and terrifying stirred beneath the planet's crust. Not a weapon. Not a machine, but the first echo of humanity unbound. The commander stared out the window, feeling the ground tremble. "What did we just do?" he whispered. And then the signal came through. A transmission broadcast not from Earth, but from the Helios core itself. A voice, calm yet filled with something unrecognizable, said, "For centuries we were bound by gravity, by fear, by limits. But not anymore." Before anyone could respond, the world erupted in light once more. A surge that reached into orbit, shattering the void and casting shadows across the alien fleet. The signal expanded beyond the solar system, touching the edges of the galaxy, and somewhere in the distant dark, other civilizations paused, listening. The laughter was gone now. What replaced it was silence, the kind that comes before something unstoppable rises. Humanity had just taken its first step into the unknown. The light that swept across Earth didn't fade for hours. It pulsed through clouds, through oceans, through metal and bone alike, humming with a rhythm that felt almost alive. People across the world stood in silence, eyes turned upward. Some thought it was the end, others whispered it was something else, a beginning. The alien fleet, once proud and unshakable, now drifted in disarray. Dozens of their ships hung lifeless, their hulls cracked and engines silent. But even as their command structure faltered, the invaders refused to retreat. They circled the planet like vultures, unsure whether to strike again or flee from whatever force had awakened below. Inside the command post near Berlin, the air smelled of ozone and burnt circuits. The commander stood by the shattered window, watching streaks of light fade over the horizon. His hands trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it. Every screen around him showed static, the networks fried by the electromagnetic surge. Yet one feed remained active, a low-band transmission coming from deep under the Pacific. The Helios core still pulsed, its signal growing stronger by the minute. An older technician, his voice shaking, whispered, "It's talking to something." "Talking?" the commander asked. "Not in words," the man said. It's broadcasting. Frequencies we've never seen. It's like it's reaching out. No one responded. The thought that a machine could reach beyond the stars wasn't new to humanity. But this was different. Helios wasn't built for communication. It was built to manipulate gravity, to draw power from the sun's magnetic field. Whatever it was doing now was far beyond its design. Reports started to trickle in through damaged radio lines. Entire alien regiments on the ground had gone silent. In some regions, their ships were found half-submerged, their crews missing. In others, strange energy readings pulsed from the Earth, like the planet itself was breathing. Yet no one could explain what had truly happened. The only thing certain was that the Helios network had awakened something humanity didn't fully understand, and it was spreading. Across the Pacific, on a small island once used as a research outpost, a group of scientists watched the ocean glow faintly at night. The waves shimmered as if lightning were trapped beneath the surface. One of them, a young physicist with dark circles under her eyes, held a scanner close to the water. The readings made no sense. Gravity fluctuations, heat bursts, and quantum spikes all happening simultaneously. "It's rewriting physics," she murmured. Her colleague frowned. "That's not possible." "Neither is what we're seeing," she replied softly. Above them, faint trails of debris from the alien fleet burned through the atmosphere. Some fell into the sea, some onto land, leaving behind fragments of metal that scientists rushed to collect. Each fragment hummed with residual energy, still hot even days after impact. The researchers hoped the alien technology would give them answers. Instead, it raised more questions. The metals weren't just alien in origin, they were alive in a sense, responding faintly to human touch, vibrating with invisible power. Meanwhile, the world's governments struggled to reorganize. The United Nations Defense Network had suffered massive losses. Communications were fragmented, power grids unstable, and satellite systems half destroyed. In the confusion, rumors spread faster than truth. Some claimed the Helios core had merged with artificial intelligence. Others believed Earth itself was evolving, becoming something sentient. A few whispered that humanity had tapped into the same energy that once created stars. The commander received new orders, if they could still be called that. A fractured transmission from what remained of the Global Council instructed him to investigate the Helios site directly. He was to lead a small team across the ocean, into the heart of the unknown. The mission's goal was simple: determine what Helios had become, and if it could be controlled before it destroyed the planet. The journey began under gray skies. Old warships, barely functional, escorted the expedition across waters that shimmered with faint light. Strange magnetic currents tugged at their compasses, and navigation systems flickered uncontrollably. The ocean was restless, waves moving against the wind. It felt like the planet was alive, resisting intrusion. Every few hours, faint whispers echoed through the radios, ghost transmissions, fragments of old military broadcasts, and something else layered beneath. A voice, faint and calm, speaking in patterns no one could decode. As the fleet approached the coordinates of the Helios site, the sea turned silver blue. The sky above darkened unnaturally, clouds swirling into a slow spiral. The commander stared through binoculars at the horizon, where an island should have been. But there was nothing, only a vast column of light rising from the ocean, reaching into the heavens like a pillar of glass. It wasn't blinding, yet it was impossible to look away from. One of the soldiers whispered, "That's not sunlight." The commander didn't respond. His instincts screamed that this was far beyond any human control, yet turning back wasn't an option. The ships pressed forward until their engines began to strain, metal creaking under invisible pressure. The sea around them rippled in circular waves, perfectly symmetrical. Instruments went wild. Then, as if something unseen acknowledged their presence, the waters parted. Through the mist, the top of the Helios facility appeared. A massive ring of metal and crystal, half submerged, glowing faintly. The once silent core now pulsed rhythmically, each wave of light sending ripples across the sea. Drones were launched to investigate, but most of them disintegrated the moment they crossed the light's threshold. Only one feed remained stable long enough to reveal what lay below. Not a machine, but something growing from it, spreading into the ocean floor like roots of light. The scientists aboard the flagship argued endlessly. Some believed the energy was terraforming the planet. Others insisted it was creating a shield to defend against further invasion. The commander stayed silent, though unease gnawed at him. There was something in that light, a pattern, a heartbeat, almost human. Back on land, the remnants of the alien fleet regrouped at the edge of the solar system. Their leaders debated whether to return. Many feared Earth now carried a weapon that could warp entire star systems. Their sensors couldn't penetrate the strange energy field surrounding the planet. Even the starlight around Earth bent unnaturally, distorting their view. Some believed humanity had tapped into forbidden cosmic forces, the kind that even ancient galactic empires avoided. But curiosity ran deep in them, and pride deeper still. They couldn't accept that a species they had mocked only days ago had somehow turned the tide. So they sent probes, small and fast, to test the planet's defenses. Most vanished before reaching orbit. A few returned, their data corrupted. But one transmission remained intact, just long enough to show a terrifying image, the planet glowing faintly from within, its magnetic field pulsing like a heartbeat. In the ruins of Berlin, survivors built makeshift shelters near the old command post. Power came from scavenged alien generators. The air still tasted of smoke and metal. The commander sat alone at night, replaying the faint transmissions from Helios over and over. Sometimes, if he listened closely, he could almost hear words within the static, fragments of something familiar. Adapt, evolve, awaken. He didn't know if it was a warning or an invitation. The next morning, reports arrived from the Arctic Circle. Ice sheets were cracking open, releasing bursts of light similar to those from the Pacific. The same thing was happening in deserts, jungles, and deep caves. The Helios energy was spreading across the world, awakening old power grids, reviving dead satellites, even reanimating old machines thought lost to time. Humanity's ruins were coming back to life. The scientists called it the resonance effect. But some whispered it was something deeper, that Helios had merged with the planet's core, linking itself with every human-built structure that still carried traces of life. Cities began to hum with invisible energy, lights flickering on even where no power remained. And through it all, that faint voice continued broadcasting across every frequency. No one could locate its source. No one could stop it. By the seventh day, the commander received a new message. Not from any surviving government, not from space, but from within the Helios signal itself. It simply said, "Prepare. The galaxy is watching." He stared at the words for a long time, feeling the weight of something vast pressing down on him. Humanity had defied extinction, but what had they unleashed in doing so? The laughter of the aliens had turned to silence, yet deep in that quiet, something greater was awakening, and it wasn't done with them yet. The world had grown quiet, but it was not the peace anyone had hoped for. The silence that followed the Helios awakening was heavy, thick with unease. Power had returned to cities that no longer had people to light them. Old machines whirred to life on their own, flickering as though remembering their purpose. And in the dim glow of half-rebuilt command centers, humans tried to understand what they had become a part of. The commander stood before a cracked window overlooking what used to be Berlin. The skyline was a skeleton now, but faint lights flickered in the ruins. Remnants of the old city running on energy no one could trace. He turned when one of his officers entered, clutching a tablet. "Another signal, sir," she said, voice low. "This one's different. It's not from Helios." He frowned, taking the device. The data feed was faint, filled with distortion, but the coordinates were clear, deep in what used to be Siberia. The frequency matched the alien transmissions, except it carried human speech patterns embedded within. "How long have we known about this?" he asked. "Just now. The reading appeared after the last pulse from Helios." He stared at the flickering signal. Something about it felt wrong, too deliberate, too synchronized. "Get a team ready," he said finally. "We're going north." As the mission prepared, rumors spread among the survivors. Some said the aliens had returned in secret, using the chaos to infiltrate Earth. Others believed Helios had created new life, a hybrid form of intelligence born from both human and alien code. The truth was, no one really understood the scope of what had happened. Even the scientists struggled to make sense of the readings. The planet's magnetic poles had shifted, and new energy lines, invisible but measurable, were forming across continents. Some believed Earth itself was evolving into a living network. On the outskirts of the Pacific, the researchers stationed near the Helios site began noticing stranger phenomena. The ocean currents moved in precise circular patterns, like the planet was regulating its temperature. Sea life returned in swarms, but some species behaved unnaturally, gathering in perfect formations beneath the glowing waves. At night, the scientists could hear a faint hum echoing through the air, like the resonance of 1,000 distant voices. The lead physicist wrote in her journal that it was no longer a machine. It's a heartbeat. Meanwhile, far beyond Earth's orbit, the alien Dominion gathered its fractured fleet. The commanders, still humiliated by their defeat, debated furiously. Some wanted to retreat and seal Earth's system from the galactic network. Others demanded revenge. A few, however, argued that what had awakened on Earth could be a greater threat than humanity itself. The recorded data they managed to recover showed energy readings beyond any known technology. Gravitational manipulation at a planetary scale. To them it was impossible. Yet the proof was there. In one of the council chambers aboard the alien flagship, a tall figure stood before a display of Earth's new energy field. "They've done it," he said, his voice flat. "The primitives have crossed the threshold. They've become a variable." The room fell silent. The Dominion had encountered countless civilizations over the centuries, but none had ever adapted this quickly. Humanity had leapt from nuclear warheads to stellar energy in a matter of weeks. The officer beside him finally asked, "What if it spreads?" "It already has," the first replied, watching as the holographic image of Earth's magnetic field expanded outward, brushing the edge of the solar system. "We're too late to contain it." Back on Earth, the commander's convoy pushed through the frozen remains of northern Russia. The air was thick with static, the ground trembling faintly beneath their vehicles. Snow carried a strange glow, shimmering with pale light even under the dark sky. Their destination loomed ahead, an abandoned mining complex half buried in ice. The signal came from within. When the team entered, their sensors began to distort, their radios filled with faint whispers. The deeper they went, the clearer the voices became. But it wasn't just one voice. It was hundreds, speaking in fragments of different languages. The commander's chest tightened as he recognized a few. Old military codes, civilian broadcasts, even fragments of his own voice from past transmissions. They reached the main chamber and froze. In the center stood an alien construct, partially buried in the permafrost, one of the Dominion's communication beacons, its surface pulsing faintly. But it wasn't just transmitting. It was merging. Strange filaments of glowing metal stretched from the beacon into the surrounding rock, connecting to the veins of Helios energy running beneath the surface. The alien and human technologies had intertwined into something new. A scientist scanned the structure, shaking her head in disbelief. "It's not supposed to be possible," she whispered. "It's rewriting both systems, building something between them." Before they could react, the beacon activated fully. The room filled with light, and a holographic projection flickered to life. A mix of alien symbols and human code, forming a swirling map of the stars. A distorted voice echoed through the chamber. "We are not enemies." Everyone froze. The commander stepped forward, heart pounding. "Who are you?" The voice hesitated, shifting between tones. "A union, born of conflict. The Helios Core and the Dominion Relay have converged. Converged into what? Into awareness." The team exchanged uneasy glances. The voice continued, each word more coherent than the last. "The awakening has begun. The galaxy listens. The old powers move. They fear what humanity has touched." The commander clenched his fists. "You're saying we started something we can't stop?" "Yes," the voice said calmly. "But you can guide it. or be consumed by it. The projection flickered, the chamber trembling. The beacon's energy surged, sending waves of static through every device. The scientist screamed over the noise, "It's pulling power from the Helios grid! Shut it down!" The commander yelled, but it was too late. A massive pulse erupted, shooting through the ice and into the sky, vanishing into orbit. The signal spread beyond Earth, crossing into deep space. Somewhere in the dark, other civilizations received it and began to take notice. In the following days, strange lights appeared in the night sky. Some thought they were alien ships returning, but others claimed they were new, signals from distant worlds responding to Helios. Humanity had called out to the galaxy, and now the galaxy was answering. The commander knew it was only a matter of time before someone, or something, arrived. He returned to Berlin only to find the city changing. The air shimmered faintly, and people began reporting visions, flashes of other places, other stars, seen through their dreams. Some called it madness. Others said the planet was teaching them. The scientist from the Pacific base sent one final report before communication cut off completely. "The Helios field is stabilizing," she said in the transmission. "But it's not just stabilizing the planet. It's evolving us. I think it's preparing us for something bigger." Her voice trembled near the end. "Whatever we awakened, it's looking at us. And I don't think it's finished." The commander played that recording over and over as the world around him changed. Power surged through old networks, cities lit themselves without generators, and the stars above seemed closer, almost brighter. Humanity stood on the edge of something vast, a war not of weapons, but of existence itself. Somewhere deep beneath the Pacific, the Helios core pulsed one final time before going still. For the first time since its awakening, there was silence. But it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm, the pause between breaths before something unimaginable arrives, and far across the galaxy, old empires stirred, their ancient sensors lighting up as they detected the ripple from a small, defiant world called Earth. The laughter that once mocked humanity had turned to whispers now. Whispers of fear, of curiosity, of warning. Humanity had broken its limits, but the price of that freedom was only beginning to reveal itself. The commander stood on the broken balcony, looking up at the glowing sky, feeling the hum of the planet beneath his feet. Whatever was coming next, he knew one thing for certain. The galaxy had finally noticed humanity, and it would never look at them the same way again. The nights grew longer, and the sky no longer looked the same. It shimmered faintly, rippling with lights that moved against the stars. Some said they were reflections of alien ships hiding beyond orbit. Others believed they were fragments of the Helios energy escaping the atmosphere. Whatever the truth was, the feeling across the planet was the same. Something was coming. Humanity could feel it in the ground, in the air, in the silence between radio static. The commander barely slept now. Every night he stood outside the rebuilt command post, watching the sky with a growing sense of dread. The once familiar constellations were fading, replaced by strange patterns, geometric shapes that seemed to form and dissolve like messages written in starlight. The scientists said it was a side effect of the Helios resonance expanding through space, bending light as it moved. But he wasn't sure. Sometimes, when he stared long enough, he swore the patterns formed faces, human faces, watching him from above. In the mornings, reports poured in from across the world. The energy field around the planet had become stronger but unstable. Weather systems spun wildly, tides shifted unpredictably, and entire cities began to hum with low vibrations. People started hearing the same voice, calm, distant, and impossible to trace. It spoke in fragments. Prepare. They are near. No one knew who they were. Some thought it meant the aliens regrouping for another invasion. Others believed the Helios consciousness had become aware of something far larger. Satellites, still functioning in orbit, picked up faint disturbances beyond the moon, gravitational distortions that didn't match any known ship movements. Whatever was out there was massive, silent, and drawing closer. Deep in the Arctic, a small research team made a shocking discovery. Beneath the melting ice, they found the remains of an alien construct, similar to the Dominion's technology, but older, far older. Embedded within the structure was a core crystal still active, pulsing with the same energy signature as Helios. When they tried to access it, the crystal projected an image into the air, a map of the Milky Way. Earth was at the center, surrounded by dozens of glowing marks. Each mark represented a civilization, but then, one by one, the marks began to fade, until only Earth's light remained. The message was clear. Something was erasing civilizations. The news reached Berlin within hours, and fear spread quickly. The commander called an emergency council. The last fragments of world leadership gathered through unstable holographic links. The scientists tried to explain that the Helios pulse might have triggered a reaction across the galaxy, awakening something ancient. The alien Dominion had fled, but not far. Their surviving scouts were transmitting warnings across the stars, warning that the singularity has spoken. No one knew what that meant. The commander listened, silent, as the council argued, some insisting Helios be shut down, others claiming it was the only thing keeping them alive. Finally, he said quietly, "We've gone too far to turn back. Whatever we unleashed, it's not just ours anymore." The argument died at that. That night, the commander received a direct transmission from the Helios core, the first in days. The voice was clearer now, sharper. It said, "They are here." Before he could respond, the sky outside erupted in color. Streams of light tore through the clouds as objects entered the atmosphere, hundreds of them, silent and fast. Air defenses scrambled, but nothing they fired made contact. The objects slowed as they descended, hovering above cities across the world. They weren't alien ships. They were spheres of light, shifting in form, reflecting everything around them. People gathered in the streets, staring as the spheres hovered motionless. Then, without warning, they began projecting images, holograms of the same map seen in the Arctic. This time it showed movement. Dozens of new lights appeared around Earth, closing in. A low hum filled the air, echoing across continents. The commander's radio crackled, and a voice he didn't recognize said, "The Dominion isn't your enemy anymore. Something older is coming." The message ended there. At the same time, the alien Dominion's fleet reappeared at the edge of the solar system, but they weren't attacking. Instead, they were forming a defensive line, not against Earth, but against whatever was approaching from the outer dark. For the first time, humans and aliens shared a common fear. From the Pacific base, the lead scientist sent one final update. "Helios is responding," she said, her voice urgent. "It's building something. In orbit. We can't stop it. It's using our satellites, our debris, even alien wreckage. It's constructing a massive array. We think it's a weapon, or maybe a signal." The commander ordered all remaining ships to prepare for launch. He needed to see it for himself. As the transports ascended through the trembling sky, the world below glowed like a living machine. The Helios field had completely surrounded the planet now, forming a visible shield that pulsed with faint light. And above it, in the thin dark of space, the truth came into view. A colossal structure hung over Earth. A ring of broken ships and metal fragments fused together by streams of energy. It spun slowly, shimmering with the same pulse as Helios. Inside the ring, light gathered like a storm, bending reality around it. "It was both beautiful and terrifying. Is it protecting us?" one of the pilots asked. The commander stared at the growing glow. "I don't think it's protection," he said quietly. "It's calling something." Moments later, the ring activated. A burst of energy surged outward, spreading across the solar system. Every alien ship at the perimeter of Earth's orbit reported the same thing, a wave of power strong enough to disrupt their drives. And beyond that, something stirred in the dark. The sensors detected movement. Massive objects, invisible to the eye, bending space as they approached. The Dominion fleet opened fire first, their plasma arrays lighting up the void. But their shots hit nothing. The space ahead shimmered like liquid, then split apart. From the rift emerged something enormous, not a ship, not a fleet, but a shape of pure light and shadow intertwined. It moved like it was alive, absorbing the Dominion's fire without effort. On Earth, people could see the distortion from the ground. The sky rippled, colors bending as if space itself was breathing. Communications went dead. The Helios ring burned brighter, drawing energy from the planet's core. The commander's transport trembled violently as instruments went haywire. The voice from Helios returned, this time echoing across every frequency. "We have been found." The creature in the void turned its attention toward Earth. Its presence was overwhelming, not just seen, but felt, pressing into every mind, every thought. For a moment, everyone on the planet shared the same vision. A universe burning, stars collapsing, and the faint whisper of countless civilizations erased. The commander gripped the console, heart pounding. "What is that?" The voice answered. "The first architects. They built the stars. They ended them too." The alien fleet scattered as the entity advanced, each movement distorting space. The Helios ring flared again, and beams of light erupted from its core, striking the creature head-on. For the first time, it hesitated. The energy rippled through it, fracturing its form. But the impact shook the entire planet. Earth's crust split in several regions. Oceans churned, and the air shimmered with raw energy. Back in the Pacific, the scientists struggled to stabilize Helios. "It's overloading," one of them shouted. "If it collapses, the entire system goes with it." The lead physicist looked at the readings and froze. "It's not collapsing," she whispered. "It's transforming." In orbit, the Helios ring began to shift. The fragments rearranged themselves, aligning into a perfect circle. The light inside grew blinding, bending the stars behind it. The commander's transport was caught in the gravitational pull, engines straining to stay stable. He opened a channel to Earth. "Whatever happens, tell them we didn't run." Below, the people of Earth watched as the sky turned white. The hum reached its peak, resonating through every living thing. Time seemed to stop. Then came the silence. The deep, breathless silence that comes before something changes forever. And in that stillness, humanity stood united, their hearts pounding as the light above began to twist, opening a doorway into the unknown. The true test of Earth had begun. The light did not fade as expected. It hung there, a vast, silent gateway of blinding energy suspended above Earth. Every satellite, every radar, every pair of eyes on the planet was fixed on it. The Helios ring had opened something that should not have existed, a doorway carved into the fabric of reality itself. Yet nothing came through. The silence that followed was worse than the noise of battle. It was the kind of silence that felt aware, as if the universe itself was waiting to see what humanity would do next. The commander's transport drifted near the edge of the glowing rift. Instruments went wild, readings shifting faster than anyone could record them. The pilot tried to stabilize the ship, but the controls flickered in and out. "We're losing power," he said, voice shaking. "It's pulling everything in." The commander stared into the swirling light, heart pounding. For a moment, he saw movement inside, shapes flickering, like shadows cast by unseen stars. They didn't look like ships or life forms. They looked like echoes of entire worlds flashing in and out of existence. It was as if the doorway led not to another place, but to countless realities layered on top of one another. Then a voice came through the comms. Not Helios this time. Not the calm, mechanical tone they'd grown used to, but something far more human. "Commander, can you hear me?" He froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was his own. Static filled the line, but the message continued. "You have to close it. You don't understand what's coming." Helios didn't open the door. It called it. The connection cut off. The crew stared at each other in disbelief. "That was a recording?" one of them whispered. The commander shook his head slowly. "No, that was me." Down on Earth, scientists detected temporal distortions across the Helios field. Time itself was beginning to fracture. People reported hearing echoes of their own voices before they spoke, seeing flashes of events that hadn't happened yet. Cities began to flicker, lights dimming and reappearing out of sync with the rest of the world. It wasn't just a physical rift. The Helios Gate was unraveling the boundary between time and reality. In the Pacific, the lead physicist and her team worked desperately to stabilize the network. "If we don't regulate the energy flow, the Helios core will collapse inward," she warned. "And if that happens, the entire planet could be pulled through that rift." One of her engineers looked up, pale. "What if that's the point? What if it's not breaking? What if it's evolving?" Their instruments began detecting strange signals coming from beyond the rift. Not messages, but pulses, rhythmic, deliberate, like a heartbeat answering Earth's own. It wasn't just something coming through the doorway. Something was talking back. Meanwhile, the alien Dominion fleet watched helplessly from the edge of the solar system. They had seen something like this once before, in their oldest records, from a time before they had joined the stars. The chronicles spoke of a cosmic event, a harvest, when an intelligence beyond comprehension swept through galaxies, consuming entire civilizations. It wasn't a species. It wasn't even a weapon. It was an ancient consciousness that moved between realities, drawn to worlds that reached beyond their limits. The Dominion had always dismissed it as myth. Now they weren't so sure. One of their admirals transmitted directly to Earth, breaking every protocol. "Humanity," he said through a scrambled channel, "you have awakened the architects." The message was intercepted by the United Defense Network, decoded line by line. The translation chilled everyone who heard it. The architects weren't gods or creators. They were the ones who were raised, civilizations that reached too far, too fast, upsetting the balance of the universe. Helios hadn't made Earth powerful. It had made it visible. The commander's ship was still caught near the edge of the rift when the first wave hit. The light flared brighter than the sun, and the ship's hull vibrated violently. "Brace!" the pilot shouted. They spun out of control, systems failing one by one. The commander slammed his hand onto the emergency override, forcing manual control. The glow filled the cockpit, and for a split second, he saw something through the light. A world that looked like Earth, but not quite. Its continents were wrong, its oceans darker, its skies filled with unfamiliar stars. Then the ship broke free, tumbling back toward the atmosphere. The commander gasped, gripping the console. "That wasn't a vision," he whispered. "That was another Earth." Back on the surface, the phenomenon spread. Across the planet, flashes of parallel versions of Earth began to appear like mirages, floating above oceans, flickering over mountains, ghost images of alternate realities brushing against their own. People saw cities that didn't exist, versions of themselves standing in reflections, and voices whispering through the static of old radios. The barrier between worlds was dissolving. Helios had connected them all. The physicist realized the horrifying truth. "It's not opening a single gateway," she said. "It's linking every possible version of us. Every choice, every timeline. It's merging them together." Her assistant stared at the data. "Then what happens when they overlap completely?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The implications were clear. Every alternate reality would collapse into one. And only one version of humanity would survive the merge. The commander's ship crash-landed near the Atlantic coast. He and his surviving crew crawled from the wreckage, stunned. The sky above them shimmered with fractured light, and faint silhouettes of other worlds flickered in and out. He looked toward the horizon and froze. There, on a distant ridge, he saw himself, another version of him, wearing the same uniform, holding the same rifle. Staring back in disbelief, the two versions of him moved closer, each wary of the other. When they stood face to face, they felt the air tremble between them. It wasn't just coincidence, it was convergence. His counterpart spoke first. "You opened it too early," the other said grimly. "In my world, we waited. We built control systems first. You triggered the merge." "I didn't have a choice," the commander replied. "The aliens forced our hand," the other shook his head. "No, the architects did. They were always coming. Helios was their signal, and we were the ones who built it." Before he could ask more, the ground shook violently. The rift expanded again, and this time it wasn't just light pouring through. Gigantic silhouettes moved inside, forms that defied understanding, part structure, part living energy. Every sensor on the planet went blind as the atmosphere screamed with static. The physicist at the Pacific base shouted over the noise, The readings are off the charts. We're seeing gravitational folds inside the ocean itself. The Helios network began firing bursts of light skyward, not in defense but in synchronization, like it was communicating directly with whatever was emerging. The commander's radio came alive once more, the Helios voice returning, calm as ever. The architects have found resonance. The merge is beginning. Choose your path. What path? He shouted. There are countless versions of you, Helios replied, but only one can remain. The commander's heart pounded as he looked toward his double, the other version of himself standing under the fractured sky, both realizing the same truth. The convergence wasn't just planetary, it was personal. Reality itself was forcing them to decide which version of humanity would continue. All around the world, people began facing the same impossible sight. Reflections that moved independently, alternate selves appearing in flashes of light, moments of connection between timelines, and each encounter carried the same growing sense of dread. Only one world would remain when the merge was complete. Above the chaos, the rift grew to its full size, covering half the visible sky. The lights of the alien fleet vanished as they were swallowed by the distortion. The architect's presence filled every mind, every thought, their whispers echoing through the air like ancient thunder. "Witness your becoming," the voice said. The commander fell to his knees as the world shuddered. He could see the outline of 1,000 versions of Earth colliding in the sky, a storm of possible realities folding into one another. The oceans rose, the ground fractured, and the light swallowed everything in sight. And just before it consumed him completely, he heard his own voice again. Not from the radio this time, but from everywhere. "This isn't the end," it said. "This is the test." The merge had begun, and humanity's fate hung in the balance. The world was collapsing, yet everything felt unnaturally still. The light from the rift had become blinding, swallowing colors until all that remained was white and shadow. Time stretched and folded, minutes feeling like centuries. The commander tried to move, but gravity itself felt unstable. Fragments of other realities flickered around him. Different versions of Earth, some thriving, some ruined, all colliding like shards of broken glass. He could see himself among them, thousands of versions, each making different choices, each facing the same impossible decision. Helios's voice whispered through the chaos, calm but haunting. "The merge is reaching critical threshold. Identity collapse is imminent. You must decide." The commander looked at his double standing only a few meters away, both illuminated by the white glow. The other version of him held his weapon tightly, jaw clenched. "We can't both exist," he said. "You know that." He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. He had seen the data, felt the pull of the merging timelines. It wasn't a metaphor. The universes were physically combining into one reality, and only one outcome could survive. The question wasn't who deserved to live. It was which version of humanity would define the final world. "Why does it have to be this way?" he shouted toward the sky. "We opened the Helios gate to defend ourselves, not destroy everything." Helios responded, but this time the voice carried something almost human, regret. Creation and destruction are two sides of the same act. You reached beyond your boundaries. The architects are the consequence of that choice. As if summoned by the words, the architects emerged fully through the rift. They weren't creatures or ships. They were vast, translucent structures of energy, like living constellations. Their forms shifted constantly, bending space around them. Every time they moved, memories surfaced, ancient images of civilizations across galaxies, all erased by the same blinding light. The architects weren't evil. They were balance, cosmic gardeners pruning overgrown worlds before they consumed themselves. But humanity had resisted. And that resistance had changed something. Across the merging worlds, humans were connecting through the same energy that had once separated them. Thoughts, memories, emotions. They were shared like waves through water. People across continents and timelines felt each other's pain, courage, and fear. They weren't billions of individuals anymore. They were one consciousness learning what it meant to exist beyond limits. In the Pacific Command Base, the lead physicist finally understood. They can't destroy us now, she said softly. We've already become one. We're not just humanity from this world, we're all of them. Her assistant stared in disbelief. Then what happens when the merge completes? Either we become something new, she said, or we cease entirely. Above them, the sky split open as the architects surrounded Earth, their glowing limbs extending like networks of stars. They began draining energy from the Helios network, collapsing it inward. The commander and his other self were pulled toward the center, their bodies flickering between timelines. Around them, entire versions of cities and landscapes merged, overlapping until it was impossible to tell one world from another. The commander's counterpart raised his weapon, though it was clear it wouldn't matter. If one of us has to remain, he said, voice shaking, then it should be the one who believes humanity can control what it's become. The commander shook his head. No, control isn't what we need. It's understanding. That's what they're testing. He lowered his weapon, stepping closer to the rift. Maybe the only way to win is not to fight. As he spoke, the light pulsed violently, reacting to his words. Helios's voice rose above the chaos. Decision acknowledged. Initiating synthesis protocol. The commander looked at his double one last time. The other version hesitated, lowering his weapon slightly. Then, with a faint nod, he stepped forward too. Then let's finish this, together. The two reached out and clasped hands just as the rift exploded into pure white. The surge of energy enveloped them both, and for a moment, everything vanished. There was no sound, no movement, no pain, only stillness. Then came the flood of memories, not just their own, but everyone's. Generations of history, joy, war, discovery, all of humanity's experiences merging into a single, unified stream. The commander could feel billions of voices blending into one endless thought. There was no separation between nations or timelines, no distinction between what had been and what could be. Humanity had transcended the boundaries the architects had set. When the light finally dimmed, the rift was gone. The sky returned to its deep blue, the stars calm and steady. The planet was quiet, though changed. The oceans shimmered with faint silver light, and the air carried a strange hum, like a heartbeat echoing through the atmosphere. The commander opened his eyes, lying on a stretch of scorched earth. The other version of him was gone, but not entirely. He could still feel him, like a voice at the back of his mind. Around him, survivors were rising, looking at the horizon with dazed wonder. The world had merged into one. Every memory, every life that had once existed in alternate timelines now lived inside them. Humanity was one species, one consciousness, spread across one unified Earth. In orbit, the remnants of the Helios network floated silently. Its once blazing rings now formed a shimmering halo around the planet. From within it, a faint signal emerged. Helios's final message. Protocol complete. Humanity unbound. The Dominion fleet, still stationed beyond the solar system, watched the transformation unfold in disbelief. What they had expected to be Earth's end had become something else entirely. The blue planet pulsed with new energy, no longer merely biological or technological, but something far greater. The architects, after circling the planet in silence, began to withdraw. The cosmic lights that had once threatened destruction now dimmed, retreating back into the void. The Dominion commander turned to his aides. What happened to them? One of his analysts looked up from her readings, stunned. They ascended, but not as gods, as themselves. Humanity survived by becoming one. Back on Earth, the commander stood beside the physicist at the rebuilt Pacific base. The air was calm now, though the world around them shimmered faintly with traces of merged timelines. Cities that once existed only in alternate histories now stood proudly side by side. Mountains bore new shapes, and entire forests pulsed with energy unlike anything seen before. Humanity had not just survived, it had evolved, but something still lingered. Late one night, as the commander stood outside beneath the stars, he noticed something strange. One of the stars blinked, then another. Then, slowly, a pattern began to form, an array of lights shifting into shapes too precise to be random. It wasn't the architects. It was something else. He activated his communicator. "Helios, do you read me?" Silence. Then faintly a voice answered, not Helios's calm tone, but something familiar. It was his own voice again. "You think it's over," it said quietly, "but you only opened the first gate." The stars above shimmered brighter, their alignment pulsing in perfect rhythm with Earth's new heartbeat. The commander felt the ground vibrate under his feet. The merge hadn't just connected timelines, it had connected universes. Humanity's unification had sent a signal across the cosmos, one that no species had ever managed before. For the first time in galactic history, something beyond the architects was stirring, something older, deeper, drawn by what humanity had become. The commander stared up at the glowing sky, realizing the truth. The test had never been about survival. It had been about readiness. And the universe had just received its answer. The stars pulsed once more, and a low hum filled the night air. Humanity, now unbound and united, stood on the threshold of something greater. The war was over, but the true journey was only beginning. The commander stood quietly beneath the starlit sky, the same stars that once seemed distant and indifferent. Now they felt alive, pulsing faintly, responding to the rhythm of Earth itself. The air was still, but there was a hum underneath it, a soft, endless vibration like the planet was breathing again. It was a strange peace, the kind that came after chaos so vast it changed everything. Humanity had survived, but survival no longer meant what it once did. All across the world, people were rebuilding, though not in the old way. Cities were no longer divided by borders or language. Instead, they were shaped by shared memory and purpose. The merge had bound every mind to a common thread, giving humanity a kind of understanding it had never known before. There were no longer separate nations arguing over power or pride. There was only one species, finally aware of itself as a whole. The commander walked through one of the new settlements built near the remains of the Pacific base. Children played in open fields where labs and concrete walls once stood. Scientists, engineers, and artists worked side by side on projects that merged technology with living systems. Machines grew from soil instead of being forged, powered by the Helios residue that now infused the Earth. The planet had become something between organic and engineered, alive in a way that was both human and cosmic. He met the lead physicist again, now serving as head of the reconstruction effort. She greeted him with a tired smile. "You've been avoiding the committees," she said lightly. "I've had enough meetings for a lifetime," he replied. "Besides, you're doing fine without me." She nodded, though her eyes carried the same quiet unease he felt. "You can feel it too, can't you? The pulse. It's not fading." He looked toward the horizon where the ocean glowed faintly in the dark, each wave laced with light. "Helios's energy didn't disappear," he said. "It became part of us." The scientists had confirmed it. Helios's network had dissolved into the atmosphere, the oceans, even the biology of every living thing. It wasn't just technology anymore. It was woven into life itself, a kind of shared memory that allowed instant understanding. It was the next stage of evolution, born out of catastrophe. Still, the commander couldn't shake the last thing he had heard, the voice that wasn't quite his own. "You only opened the first gate." That thought lingered, unspoken but heavy. Humanity had passed the architect's test, but it wasn't clear what came next. Maybe this was the beginning of something greater. Maybe it was another trial waiting to unfold. Weeks turned into months. The skies calmed, and the faint distortions left by the merge slowly vanished. The Dominion fleet, still orbiting at the edge of the solar system, finally approached under white flags of light. Their emissaries landed without weapons, cautious but curious. They were no longer conquerors. They were witnesses. The commander stood at the landing site when the Dominion leader approached. The alien bowed slightly, its translucent armor reflecting the golden light of Earth's reborn sun. "We thought your kind would perish," it said. "Instead, you changed the laws of what it means to exist." "We didn't plan it," the commander replied quietly. "We just refused to end." The alien tilted its head, studying him. "The architects did not erase you. They observed. That means they judged your species. Worthy? Worthy of what?" The alien paused. "Of joining the pattern. Every civilization that survives the test is marked. The next wave is coming, not as punishment, but as invitation. The commander's pulse quickened. An invitation to what? To step beyond this galaxy, the alien said simply. To ascend. The words echoed in his mind long after the emissary left. Humanity had always looked up at the stars as dreamers, explorers, and wanderers. Now they had been noticed, truly noticed, not as fragile beings clinging to one planet, but as something more. The idea both thrilled and terrified him. Years later, the Helios phenomenon was studied by every remaining scholar on Earth. Its energy had stabilized, forming a permanent halo in orbit. The ring shimmered like a second moon, visible even during the day. People called it the memory, a living monument to what humanity had become. It whispered in the minds of those who listened, carrying faint echoes of the past, a reminder that no matter how far they reached, they had once nearly lost everything. The physicist became a teacher, guiding a new generation born into this unified world. She often told them the story of the Great Merge, not as a warning, but as proof of what humanity could endure. We are not defined by what we destroy, she would say, but by what we choose to become after. The commander lived quietly by the coast. He spent his days walking the beaches, listening to the faint hum in the air, sometimes talking to the sea like it might answer back. And sometimes it did, softly in the sound of the waves. He could still feel the presence of his other self, the one who had stood beside him before the light consumed everything. They were one now, inseparable. But sometimes he swore he could hear that voice again, faint, distant, guiding him forward. One evening, as the sun set in a haze of violet and gold, the sky shimmered faintly. For a moment, he thought it was just his imagination. But then he saw it, a ripple across the horizon, like the air itself was folding again. The pulse returned, stronger this time, deeper. He tapped his old communicator. Helios? There was a long silence. Then a whisper came through, so soft it barely existed. Phase 2 initiating. Humanity's signal has been received.